And it was interesting to hear just now Kishore, but now welcome to the Negotiation in Action. The maestro is here, it's not me, but in a sense, my name is Vincent. You know that you have probably seen me from L&D, and we have now another Kishore. It's a day of Kishore, so as they would say in Southeast Asia, same but different. So allow me just 1 minute to set up the stage. So this workshop is Negotiation in Action is not a negotiation of legal agreements. That's even though it's from OGC, but you are in the right room, don't worry about that. This session is really an introduction of principal negotiation, which could be helpful for aspiring PTL, but also for current PTLs, to understand the negotiation in the context of designing, preparing, and finalizing the negotiation in projects. It will also provide thoughts on best practices, how to tackle practical challenges that you may be facing to conduct efficient negotiation on behalf of AIB. But also negotiation is a life skill training that you can use at work, at home as well. So I'm very happy to introduce you to Kishore, who has over 30 years of experience in negotiation. He has literally conducted hundreds of negotiation, or he has been part of negotiations for hundreds of times at the World Bank, at the AIB. And in fact, this session will not be a lecture. It will be mostly interactive, some knowledge sharing, insights, mostly examples, and also some quizzes. So we really would like you to be as participative as possible, because then we will benefit a lot. So over to you, Kishore. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you, Vincent. Thank you. Thanks also to all the colleagues. Excuse me. I know there was a lot of choice today, right? 6 sessions going on, and 5 of the sessions are led by VPs and DGs. You had multiple choices, but you decided to come here. So we are both really very grateful. And in today's masterclass, we aim to, as mentioned by Vincent already, we aim to talk about how to prepare for, sequence, strategize, finalize negotiations, to become a sort of efficient negotiator. And I know here in this room there are many negotiators, and some from OGC. I have to be careful. Some who have already negotiated many projects. If I make mistakes or something, please feel free to intervene. The approach we will take, what we will be discussing today will be relevant in all types of negotiation situation. It is not only for AIIB's project negotiations. Although, we'll focus on the dynamics of or actions involved in negotiations. However, to ensure that whatever we talk about remains relevant to AIIB, the examples that we will share will be from our negotiations in the context of AIIB projects, or also from the World Bank, where I spent 25 years. So obviously my examples will be from the World Bank, and also because they have many more stories to share. The intent of sharing this is actually to highlight experience-based best practice, and to try to give some tips for you to ponder, and maybe one day you will use them in AIIB negotiations or your own personal negotiations. So what we will do basically in this session it is divided into, let's say, 5 sections, 5 segments. We'll very briefly talk about the definition. We'll talk about the generalities. We will also review, try to share some information about variety of negotiations. We'll go through approach and sequence. We'll also talk about how to sequence negotiations so that a professional negotiator becomes more efficient. Vincent has already mentioned, we really wish this class to be interactive. So please, you are absolutely welcome to share your thoughts, ask questions. There is without any hesitation, nothing, because there is no book on negotiation that AIIB follows or World Bank follows. There are hundreds and hundreds of books that are written, and every negotiation is unique in itself. Now, to stay focused, just to stay focused on today's theme, we need to understand what we mean by negotiations. So this is, I'm sure this is a definition that you have seen in many books. Negotiation is what? It's a strategic discussion between or amongst parties that resolves an issue in a way that both or all parties find acceptable. Three elements are important. One is, it is obviously strategic discussion, but it has to resolve an issue. Otherwise, there is no need to sit down and waste time, right? Negotiation, it has to resolve an issue, and it should be acceptable for both parties. So I know Zach is here, and I'm sure there are some other economists. I'm sure our economist colleagues will immediately are all familiar with game theory. I'm sure this is basic economics that an economist does, right? That theoretical framework where you conceive social situations between competing actors, the science of, they call it a science of strategy, to come to a conclusion in a specific setting. That game theory, the challenge in that game theory is that you have to come to a meeting point, right? The equilibrium. Zach, am I correct? As equilibrium. And at that point, when you arrive at that, that is called the outcome, right? The equilibrium is the outcome. Very interestingly, negotiations is more or less the same thing. It is similar. You have to come to an acceptable outcome. Then that is where negotiation happens. So for those people who are familiar with game theory will probably be more comfortable negotiating or strategizing. But obviously, we are not here. I'm not here anyway to talk about the game theory, that game theory. Econ department is here. Many other efficient, eminent, prominent economists are also here. They will talk about it if they need. But what we will do is we will focus on the mundane, the day-to-day, the action, the practical aspects of negotiation. That from an institutional perspective or from an operational perspective. So now, at this time, let me just ask a very quick question. How many of you have heard the term chief negotiators? Okay, how many? I will not give the floor to OGC this time, but others, please bear with me. So, anyone has heard the term chief negotiator? Okay. So, Ranjini, please tell us, what is it? Please.
The person that basically leads the negotiation.
Okay. Well, the chief negotiator, absolutely. And chief negotiators in the context of AIIB were those delegates that negotiated the treaty that established AIIB. And we call it Articles of Agreement. So the meetings took place in Kunming first, Kunming, Beijing, Singapore, Beijing again, and ultimately the charter, the Articles of Agreement was put on for signature, open for signature in Beijing again. That Articles of Agreement was negotiated by chief negotiators. Now to create a sort of analogy, we could say that our team leaders, the team leaders of AIIB, are our chief negotiators for projects. You guys are actually the chief negotiator of projects. Now let's go to some generalities. First point is everybody negotiates something. I come from Nepal, and decades ago, when I was growing up in Nepal, my morning routine was to go to a vegetable market, a local market where I needed to buy some vegetable. The challenge was that I had to pay the price which was lower than what the seller had proposed. I had to negotiate. Yes, in my country, anyway, even now, people negotiate. People go to negotiate up to they negotiate a vegetable purchase. Even a cauliflower, if you have to buy, you have to reduce the price. And I think in our part of the world, many colleagues will relate to that, except those who are born after 2000, year 2000. In those days, it happened. So at that time, because I did that all the day, pretty much every day, right? A senior citizen, an old man, was also observing, and he said, hey, by every time you reduce, you are successful in getting a better deal. You are a good negotiator. And actually, at that time, I felt very proud that I was a great negotiator. And are there any French literature people here? You know, this is like Mr. Jourdain in Moliere's book, who is happy because he has been told that he has been doing prose all his life. So there's something like that. So basically what I'm saying is everybody is negotiating something. We negotiate all the time. It's a continual action in life and definitely in business. Negotiation can be for anything. It can be for serious ones like rights, obligations, covenants, conditionalities like lawyers get involved into. But negotiations can also take place for taxi fare, for restaurant bill. In some part it happens, right? Discount. You also have wedding dowries, they negotiate a lot. Divorce, they negotiate a lot. Arranged marriage, they negotiate a lot. You have peace after war. When a peace agreement is signed, there is a lot of negotiations. You have border issues, trade issues, water power sharing, very complicated issues. But everywhere somebody is negotiating, and the list is endless. And negotiation can also be with anybody. It's not only it can be with anybody. It can be with your bosses. It can be with your juniors, peers, colleagues. It can be with your family, son, parents, whatever. These are a little bit, let's say, a little less formal. But there are also serious negotiations that happen with countries, with international organizations, with big conglomerates, multinational corporations, stakeholder groups. I'm sure Safeguards people are very much aware of those negotiations that happen with stakeholder groups, always tough. Every negotiation is unique. That's why we cannot say this is the rule for negotiation. You have to understand an array of stuff and to become a good negotiator. There is no hard and fast rule. Every negotiation is unique. How it is conducted depends on the negotiator's background and approach that the negotiator takes. We do not intend to stereotype. Okay, it's not, the intention is not to stereotype, but literature talks about special characteristics, special traits of negotiators. Every country, every community, every ethnic group, there is a special trait. I'm not going to tell you 192 countries' characteristics, obviously. But I know that Chinese negotiators, for example, in China, when they negotiate anything, even a small negotiation up to a big deal, they always push for a long-term goal. Their focus is long-term. I saw Yuanjiang somewhere here today. Oh, Yuanjiang, he was a negotiator of several negotiations in China. He has led delegations. So can you say whether what I'm saying is correct or not? As a negotiator of China, can you say something? Is it correct that China is always for long-term goal?
Yes, I think that the government negotiation differs from business or project negotiation. Certainly, it pursues a long-term interest. And when we say long-term interest, it means fundamental national interest. So it doesn't mean that the government has to sacrifice short-term interest. It only says that the government, this is the area, the short-term interest is the area that can do some trade-offs. So I can give you a very typical example that when Chinese government initiates its first free trade agreement with ASEAN, again ASEAN. There is a huge debate among the government agencies whether that we should, do this negotiation. And I think that there's a loud voice that we should not do that. Because it's the same reason as another Keisha has mentioned, because ASEAN is very weak in terms of competition. So which means that when you negotiate the free markets, the open trade agreements with ASEAN, you have to make a lot of concessions, and you don't get any benefits. And the immediate damage is that you will provide zero tariff to the tropical products from ASEAN. That will certainly destroy the producers in the southern part of China. So there's a lot of debate on this. But then the Chinese government still decides to go ahead with this negotiation. I still recall that the then Prime Minister Zhu Rongji has told everybody sitting in the room for their consultation, he said, I know that everybody here sitting in the room is trying to defend, for the interest of your national, interest. But the fundamental interest for China is really the long-term neighborhood relationship with ASEAN. So then we have this first trade agreement with ASEAN 20 years ago. Thank you.
Thank you, Yunjang. Thank you for confirming my statement, the statement that I had read somewhere. Thanks a lot. And it's good to have direct live example from experienced people, right? So if Chinese are considered, are known to be long-term oriented negotiators, Japanese are famous for bringing their company's position in a very very little authority. When they come for negotiations, Japanese negotiators have a list of, a checklist. They can't budge. So when you negotiate with Japanese, it takes more time, and it's also less flexible. French, very formal. Apparently, French are very, very formal. Everything has to be formalized, very formalistic, and they have to discuss and argue each and every provision, each and every language. And so, from that influence, Senegalese in Africa, Senegal, is also supposed to be extra careful in terms of use of language. We have also on the other side the US. US are also very legalistic, obviously. They are very explicit, very legalistic, but results-oriented kind. They don't care about long-term, short-term. They want a result now, quickly. So these are the few things, and I'm not going to list 192. There are many, many books that have identified these characteristics and special traits, which you can review. I hope nobody was offended because I talked about explicit Americans, right? But that's what books say, it's not me. Each culture displays a unique feature. Therefore, variation in style, approach, and positioning in negotiation is very, very common. This is why, even in AIIB, when you do a same type of project, let's say even in India, in one country where you have so many states, you do the same kind of project, the dynamics can be very different. Am I correct, Aditi? It's very different. It's the same country, same type of project. Why is it not the same thing? It is because there is a lot of variation, style, positioning. So these things are very, very important. Public international law is a branch of law, let's say, in international law. Public international law is the subject, is the branch which talks about treaty making, how to sign treaty, about treaty. And there is a famous convention called Vienna Convention on the Law of Treaties. Am I right, Yu-Chang? Am I correct? Okay, so it talks about treaties. It's about it's actually the Bible for international lawyers, we could call it. Without that, an international lawyer will not deal with treaties. That convention on the law of treaties, does not recommend any style in negotiation. it simply says, the implicit meaning is that countries, subjects of international law, are supposed to design their own style and approach which benefits them and which makes them more efficient. This convention does only one thing, which is that it talks about full power. Meaning, whoever comes to negotiate or negotiates something should have the power, full power to negotiate that. And that's why many PTLs here, they ask a question as to why are we asking all this? Even if we don't ask in IFIs, we don't ask that immediately, but we still have that inbuilt. The protection is there, and that comes from the international, it comes from international law. It is not just created by a lawyer in one institution. When you talk about full power, there is also this thing called a presumed full power. And what it means is, if you have a Minister of Foreign Affairs of a country, if he or she, as a Minister of Foreign Affairs, comes and negotiates something, he or she has full power. You don't need to test, because that is presumed full power. Similarly, an ambassador who is accredited to a country, that ambassador also has full power. That's why they use the term ambassador plenipotentiary. Plenipotentiary meaning having full power. Same thing, those permanent representatives to international organizations, I think they also have full power. And in the business of finance, IFIs, in the IFI practice, ministers of finance or whoever holds the treasury, the purse of the country, that minister is also presumed. The one considers that person also has full power to negotiate. Now let's go to the variety of negotiation. So far, I'm okay? Too fast, too slow, too boring? Any question in between? So otherwise, negotiations can be, it's all a question of how you coin the thing, right? It's all authors. There are varieties of authors, varieties of names. They coin it. So we are not going to go into the etymology of that, but we are simply saying that, yes, please. Yes, please.
So when you talk about somebody being plenipotentiary, having full powers, in this age of technology, how valid is that? Because earlier when people were traveling, they were traveling to, let's say, after Second World War to negotiate the Bretton Woods. But this is different. People want to check back always, and it's very possible. You just have to make a phone call and keep checking back. So how sure can you be of the positions taken by the representatives?
Well, I think it's a very good question, because this Vienna Convention was written so many years ago, right? But meanwhile, I'll tell you one thing. Maybe the mode of communicating has changed, but the concept of full power has not. Even when you want to talk, even in the context of a deal that a Minister of Foreign Affairs from a country wants to do with another country, they will still want to ensure that whether they talk on the phone or not, they will still want to talk to the Minister of Foreign Affairs and won't check anything, but they will want to receive something in writing. This is an evolving technology, has asked us to ask many further questions. You are absolutely right. It's very difficult to give a concrete response, but the notion of full power is not dead. It is still there. You want something to be done by somebody who has the authority. When I said presumed full power, is that you don't check those things. If you have a Minister of Finance, and if someone comes without anything and you don't even know whether he or she is a Minister of full powers, you will still want to check something. But normally, those are not, those are presumed things. I remember, I know some colleagues here are also from World Bank, so they will also probably remember when Somalia, in 91, when Somalia started to have problems, at one point in IMF and World Bank annual meeting, there were 6 delegates from Somalia. Literally 6, because it was broken into several pieces at that time. Several warlords were running that particular component, that particular territory, and they all came to attend the annual meeting of World Bank and IMF. So it was a nightmare for lawyers there. So ultimately they were not allowed to attend, but some other trick was, they were allowed to attend without not considered as delegate of the country. So that is probably the response to your question. Talking about negotiation variety, the people talk about collective negotiation or separate negotiation. Sometimes you do negotiation with a group, with one party, and you are one party, there is another party. But you can also do things, negotiations, collective. Some people talk about collective negotiations. And collective negotiation is actually several groups form another group and they negotiate. And we don't have the general counsel. Alberto Nino is not here. Otherwise, he would have probably supported what I'm saying. His previous company was, did also negotiate with many negotiators at the same time. Collective negotiation can be, there is no size. Delegation, any country can have 3 people, 4 people, 10 people, right? It's their choice. But in collective negotiation, there are literally several hundreds. And the company Vale, that's where this issue happened, there was a dam that collapsed and hundreds of thousands of people died because of collapsing of dam. And there was issue of compensation for, and then relief, temporary relief and compensation. And Somnath will understand this term easily, as well as safeguard people will too. And if I'm not mistaken, that company was negotiating with about 100,000 people at the same time. 100,000 literally, because there were so many groups. So that's collective negotiation. You can also have separate. They also use the term bilateral, multilateral. Bilateral, 2 parties, multilateral with several parties. And for your information, many international conventions or treaties that are negotiated under the auspices of UN or other international organizations, they are all multilateral negotiations. You can also have sometimes vertical or horizontal. Question, right? Vertical and horizontal, when does it happen? It happens in politics. When you have different political parties forming alliances here and there, so they have to also deal vertically, they also have to deal horizontally. So those things can also happen. You have face-to-face negotiation, and I think this is very common for us nowadays that we have entered the era of negotiating virtually. Face-to-face negotiation means something, right? Face-to-face negotiation or by other means. You can meet with people, they come to the negotiation table, you go there, whatever. Or you do through exchange of email, exchange of notes, letters. In the olden days, people used to send letters, exchange of letters, and the letter would arrive 2 months, 3 months after because it was hand-carried by someone, and then countersigned and then returned. So anyway, those things have changed, but you have face-to-face or by other means, meaning email, letters, or other form. You have also direct and indirect. Direct negotiation, easy to understand. It's basically you have a counterpart in front of you, and you negotiate, and they will discuss. But there are situations where you have to you do negotiations in an indirect fashion. Well, I see Yogesh here, so I will share a Nepal example from Nepal. So some 15 years earlier, in the country, we had a huge political problem. There was a rebel group, which was, basically for 16 years, they killed people. They were, let's say, killing people, looting. This was a rebel group which wanted a different political system called People's War. They launched a People's War movement. And that group was negotiating with the central government of that time. But the rebel group was still not recognized. No country had, I mean, all the countries, including our own, had labeled the rebel group as right, as rebel. No negotiation, no nothing. But they were in hiding. I mean, in a secret fashion, they were having a peace deal, negotiating a peace deal. And at that time, they approached the government that was dealing with. They approached the World Bank and said, "You have to finance something for our combatants." Normally, World Bank also does not easily get involved in these things. So even in World Bank at that time, and Ranjini will probably remember, these were being done in, under the table, basically. Not many people knew. Only those who needed to know would know about it. So the World Bank sent a mission to finalize that operation, and they go to the country. And I was also part of that. That's why I'm sharing this example. And we were supposed to negotiate the deal with the government representatives, those who theoretically have full power, right? Normally, we have the Ministry of Finance person, some technical ministry, a legal person, and that's what happens in these small countries. We go to the negotiations table, and we have a draft, a legal document that we proposed. Each and every provision, the delegation that was attending was not able to respond to. They were not in a situation of saying yes or no, because it was a very political thing. What was happening at the time was that the Prime Minister was sitting in his office with the rebel leader. It literally, in reality, the Prime Minister and the rebel leader were negotiating. So any provision that we would want them to accept, or they would want, we proposed, they would say, the head of delegation would say he has to call his minister, the minister would call the prime minister, the prime minister would discuss with the rebel leader, and the rebel leader will say yes or no, and then the information will filter back, will be sent back to the head of delegation. And he or she, it was a man at the time, so he would say yes, we would put it, he would say no, we would remove it. So this was a clear example of proxy or indirect negotiation. It's not only in Nepal. Actually, you know Kosovo, right? I'm sure Kosovo. It used, now it's a country, but at one point it had a different status. So when Kosovo did not yet have a full country status, it was being administered by the UNDP. So UNDP had literally gone to Pristina, the capital of Kosovo, and opened offices. There were 4 pillars. One pillar was to deal with law, justice, and etc. Second pillar was to deal with water supply and sanitation, whatever a country needs. And one of the pillars was Ministry of Finance. So they were all UNDP staff, not except those support people. All were UNDP staff. So World Bank negotiated projects with Kosovo. So that's also an example of indirect negotiation. So with this huge, variation and situational differences that one can see, the approach that one takes during negotiation is important. How someone negotiates matters. It looks very easy. We go there, we meet with people, shake hands, come back, a paper is signed. That's not always the case. We are because negotiations do not only happen for projects; they also happen for many more important and critical things. So how one negotiates, that matters. So let's go and discuss the approach and our style to negotiate. So far, any question in this? In connection with this part, is it yes, Alok?
Vertical and horizontal. Can you give an example?
Yes. For example, political parties. When you have 2 political parties, they need to give, they want to get some vote or support from the other party at a level which is very low, right? Lowest level. Local government, for example, needs to support, but they cannot, the party on the right or the other party at the highest level will not be able to go and negotiate with them. So what they do is they negotiate with the big boss of that other party, and that big boss of the other party will negotiate, because in politics, and in our part of the world, most importantly, there is a lot of vote game. So in those situations, this thing can happen. So let's now see, some approach or style of negotiation. I've already said that there is no recommended style, right? You have to be efficient. You go, you negotiate, and then you are lucky, you get a deal. You are not lucky, you get you get into problems. That's different. But let's go. There are basically three approaches to negotiate. This is something that you have probably seen, right? In many other international relations books or negotiations books. Those who have taken the course of negotiation, they will have seen this. There is soft negotiation. What happens is, in soft negotiation, the negotiator wants to avoid conflict. And because of that, the negotiator is not willing to take any risk. And because of that, accepts or makes concessions readily to just have a deal. There is a problem with that. Soft negotiation looks good. But what happens if you are too soft in terms of negotiating? Your approach may lead to suboptimal results. The results may not be the one is good for your institution. Right? So sometimes being soft is good, but soft negotiation has this risk. So this is why, under some circumstances, people talk about the power of no. You should also not hesitate to say no, if that is justifiable. Second type of negotiation is the opposite of soft, of course. Hard negotiation. In hard negotiation, negotiator sees any situation as a contest of will. Basically, someone has to oppose the other side all the time on every issue. The person that negotiator considers the other side as an adversary, meaning an enemy. The one is trying to get me. And then, as a result, that hard negotiator will always take extreme positions. Positions will always be tough. Gotcha kind of approach. You have heard in political science books those action to action. You've heard of the term action to action. When North Korea, US were trying to negotiate the denuclearization deal, there was a lot of talk about action to action. They also talk about parallel and simultaneous approach. Okay, you remove 200 missiles from this territory. We will simultaneously, in parallel, remove 200 missiles from that territory. It's action to action, very tough, hard, parallel and simultaneous. Everything is done. So these are a few examples of hard negotiations. Some also talk about structural adjustment loans that World Bank used to give, and which were hurting clients, countries. Some talk about those negotiations also as hard negotiations, but let's not go into that detail. You got an idea. What is the side effect of hard negotiation? Okay, approach may lead to delays or complete failure. You take too hard a position, then the other side may not be very happy or may not agree with whatever you are proposing, then you are losing the deal, right? Many negotiations actually have failed, even real solid, straightforward project negotiations have failed. I remember, again, example, World Bank, there was an education project in a specific country, prepared for 1 year, ready for negotiation, they come for negotiation, and then the client wants something, and the World Bank was refusing. Basically, the request that the country made, World Bank could not agree with that. They discussed and discussed and discussed. The tension mounted, basically. And then the client said, okay, then we don't need this project anymore. It was too late for the World Bank to go back. Because, sometimes ego plays. People have ego. So it plays, and then it was. So because of soft is too, can be suboptimal, hard may delay what many scholars have proposed, and I support. That's why I want to focus some time, is a sort of negotiation which relies on principle. That is the ideal negotiation style, which we can call principled negotiation. So far? Okay? Continue? Yes. Of course.
Can I?
Of course.
If you don't want to compromise with your principle, that is when, there's something called non-negotiable.
Yeah. Yes,
Come to a
absolutely.
time
Mhm.
and your principles are getting compromised. So you will have to take a hard stand.
Well,
And
absolutely.
if it doesn't work, it doesn't work.
Absolutely
So
correct.
I think that things not working out because the negotiations didn't work out is not necessarily a bad thing.
No, it's not good or bad. These are, I already said, if you do hard, then the risk is you have either you break, the negotiations are cancelled or delayed. So that risk the institution will have to take.
Yeah,
it's not good or bad. Absolutely, it's your judgment.
Yeah, but your reputation is protected.
I think so. It's how you manage your reputation. Then this is another group which will have to deal with your saving the reputation kind of unit, right?
Yeah.
But you're right. This is why I started by saying sometimes the no should be said, if that is justifiable.
Yeah.
It's all a question of how much risk you want to take and what you want to do, what you want to achieve, what is your priority, right? And actually, I should have started by saying it. Even in this institution, all units are negotiating. And I'm sure people who are in investment operation, they will agree with me that they are all negotiating with all the units. Every second is a negotiation. That happens.
Yeah,
But anyway.
That's why the negotiating, people say no agreement is sometimes better than.
Well, exactly. Exactly. Thank you, Yanjang. So now we go to principled negotiation, which is slightly different. It's, so let me go this and we'll discuss again. So in principled negotiation, what happens is negotiators decide issues based on merits rather than through haggling processes and this and that. It's merit. And they also focus on victory for both parties or all parties on doing or not doing something. It's not only my win, it's not gotcha kind of attitude or completely soft, do it, let's finish and go home. No, it is getting something which is beneficial for both. And this is the kind of thing that I subscribe to personally, and many development institutions, those who are dealing with development, they by and large practice that. Just for your information, this principled negotiation, the term was coined at Harvard. The term was popularized by Harvard University. So let's give credit to Harvard and those who have come from Harvard. I know there are people from Harvard here. So principled negotiation, when does it apply? How does it apply? It can be helpful for any one issue or multiple issues. If you have only one issue to deal, you can also take that approach. If you have several issues, you can also take that approach. It applies to negotiation between two parties only or multi-party. It is no problem. When you have multiple issues, and when I talk about issues, it can be staff issue, it can be salary increase is also negotiation, which is tough, right? Participation in teams, doing projects, collaborating, developing an international space station, anything. It can be done. Principal negotiations can be valid for that. And it can be for two parties or multi-party. And you don't need to follow a ritual. It's very, you improvise. you can improvise if you want. You can also follow rituals, but there is no hard and fast rule. It can also be a sort of free-for-all kind of thing. And as I mentioned earlier, the MDBs, most MDBs, in majority of the cases, they take the principal negotiations approach nowadays. And then when I say projects, I'm talking about the technical assistance, initiatives, and everything. So what should be the emphasis? Where should one lay emphasis upon when you do principal negotiations? So that's, first of all, we have to understand that most negotiations, they get complicated because parties mix issues. They bring, in the gamut of negotiation, they bring everything, even those that are not related or some political issues. So the issues are mixed, even the unrelated ones. So the number one thing in this, in principal negotiation, is to be able to separate the people and the problem. Do not mix. And then focus on common interest, not positions. Your position is this, my position is this, does not help. Is not principal negotiation. It is our interest. How do you benefit? The common word will be win-win, but let's be a little bit academic here. So it is common interest, not positions. Similarly, you insist on using objective criteria. Very often when you negotiate, many negotiations go in tandem with abstract that nobody can justify, prove, and then there is anger, or too much abstract, even if somebody can explain, the other side will not understand. Too philosophical, no. In principal negotiation, you try to use objective criteria. And most importantly, invent options for mutual gain. Not only your victory, not only their victory, the other side's victory, it's the victory for both or of both. Here, the 4 points: separating people from the problem, focusing on common interest and position, is insisting on the use of objective criteria and mutual gain. All these elements are followed in many treaties, but one of the very important treaties for South Asia also used these 4 elements. And I want to share that example with you. It is, in 1960, India and Pakistan. Why this was taken is because both are our members, and World Bank will also come into play. Therefore, World Bank is also our sister organization. So therefore, the example is relevant. For those coming from South Asia, maybe it will not be that useful, but for others, maybe. But the Indus Waters Treaty, one major water treaty in the South Asia region, was signed in 1960. And this provides a great example. Its negotiators actually, to achieve the results, to come to conclusion, used all 4 elements, relied on these 4 elements. And for a better understanding, let me take you all back 70 years back into history. None of us was born, I'm sure. So this is really history, okay? Do you know what this is? Yeah, it's still legible, right? This is, well, of course. Amit, do you know what this is? We will only talk about this treaty in a non-controversial way, just to give an example of what it is. The map of India before 1947, or pre-partition map. And again, I know I should not be using the word partition, but anyway, pre-partition map of India. For those who are not initiated, it includes, in the map, this map includes in one country, Pakistan and India. And now, later on, it became Bangladesh, but at that time, there was no Bangladesh, right? Bangladesh became in 71. So you are absolutely right, also Bangladesh. But this is pre-partition India. What happened was, until 47, India was under the British rule. Partition happened in 47. Two new sovereign countries were formed, India and Pakistan. There used to be a big river system called the Indus River system, which flowed until then into one single country, now started to flow into two countries. After the partition, it had to be shared by two countries. Issues that could be resolved until then with one central government decree or order or executive decision now needed the decision of two sovereigns. What happens in this situation, so this is the map, by the way. This is how it was partitioned. On the left of the map, you will see Pakistan. On the right of the map is India. And this is not a detailed map. This is just to give you an idea because it talks about the river. Because of the division, now that the river went into two places, two countries, water security became a major issue for both countries. India and Pakistan each rushed to secure a certain quantum of water for themselves. They wanted a guarantee for X amount of water for their country. But what happened is that the total that was being claimed was above the water available. What happens in those situations? There is tension, there is conflict. Problem started, tension mounted. And the countries started to feel that there was absence, feel the lack of a regime to govern this kind of situation. Because partition happened, there was no treaty. Nobody actually took care of that. And that is where the opportunistic World Bank came into play, 1950. World Bank said, we are going to provide our good offices, for you, India and Pakistan, to negotiate a treaty. We will facilitate the negotiation of that treaty. So when that started, when meetings took place in Washington, actually every 2 months, 2-3 months, there would be meeting in Washington, use World Bank office, discussion would take place. So, and in the beginning, World Bank actually proposed that this Indus Basin, which includes, by the way, which includes 6 rivers, 6 major rivers. So they call it tributaries, but these are 6 major rivers, part of the Indus River system. World Bank had proposed that this whole Indus Basin be developed as a jointly managed single unit. But naturally, a few years earlier, there was so much tension. Both countries, the proposal was rejected by both countries. I'll cut the story short with several iterations of plans, claims, counterclaims, all revolving around the quantum of water and guarantee were presented by both and rejected by both. Ultimately, in the end, it was agreed to divide the river system. The entire river system was divided. 3 eastern rivers, I'll show you the map actually, were allocated for India, and 3 western rivers were allocated to Pakistan. So this is how it went now. You see, the 3 lines that you see from top to when you going up, the 3 lines are allocated to India, the 3 others are allocated to Pakistan. It's one of the most tricky, one of the most important, but one of the most important, treaty. All international law scholars who deal with water issues, they cannot go away, they cannot not go through this. This is one of the most important treaties. It took 10 years to negotiate. The Good Office was proposed in 1950. Until 1957, There was no way no one was hopeful. At the World Bank also, very senior level vice president was involved. Still, for 8 years, nothing happened. It was just meeting, coming back, meeting, rejecting, etc. But in the end, when the idea of allocating rivers, 3 rivers to one and 3 others to another, with naturally a lot of extra perks, this was agreed. It took 10 years to sign. It was signed in 1960. So this map, this negotiation of Indus Waters Treaty was successful because the negotiators put the right focus on those 4 elements that we talked about. Remember, separating people from problem. At that time, in that region, the Kashmir issue was brewing, was very heated, and countries wanted to bring Kashmir issue into play. But ultimately, they agreed that we will dissociate. We will not talk about, in the context of Indus Waters Treaty, we will not bring Kashmir issue. We also talked about the second element which was common interest. In order to make it for a common purpose, common interest, they created a huge trust fund to develop Indus Basin. And there was a big fund, several hundreds million dollars, called Indus Basin Development Fund. So Indus Basin development was proposed for common interest. They used objective criteria. Remember I said you have to use objective criteria. The objective criteria were not political. They are very technical because Indus Treaty actually has been negotiated by engineers. Essentially, the people of science negotiated that. That is why people say that was successful, because they were able to talk about water quantity, water quantum, needs of countries, availability of water, and compensation for lost water. Because of the partition, both countries lost water from a specific river, tributary, so they had to be compensated for. And they found a way to compensate for that. And in this, both India and Pakistan saw mutual gain. And then finally they agreed with this division of the river in this way. An Indus Treaty was signed, and even now it is working. Although there are news items, but the treaty is still working. But it is, for international lawyers, it is one excellent example. But naturally, this treaty was signed because of many things. Not all treaty negotiations are easy. There is always going to be obstacle, right? There will be obstacle of technical nature, of political nature, behavioral nature. You have logistics can become a problem, and tactical issues can also become an obstacle. They all need to be addressed by negotiators with tact and strategy, a good strategy and good tact. So let's talk about the obstacles now. What happens and what if the counterparty's position are stronger? Sometimes, the other side is stronger in terms of, let's say, all the facts and figure. Everything makes the other side stronger. What do? Then what you do is you develop something commonly referred to as the BATNA. I am sure many people here have heard about BATNA. BATNA is the best alternative to a negotiated agreement. A party's BATNA is actually the party's alternative. The most advantageous position for that party, alternative for the party, if in case the negotiation does not happen as that party intends. In simple language, it will be a minimum standard, right? Minimum standard for that party. But still, problems of various nature can be there. What happens if the counterparty does not play ball? Does not. Then what you do is you do the negotiation jujitsu. You all know what jujitsu is, right? We have all done that, of course. Jujitsu is a Japanese game. It's a method to defend oneself by using the energy and strength of the other in your advantage. It's called jujitsu. Apparently that is a sport. Apparently, I don't know that. So in negotiation, what it means? In negotiation, it means using the opponent's strength and weakness to accomplish one's own goal. And to attempt that, you have to really juggle. You have to use several methods, change approach, tactics, arguments, variables, and alternatively. So you are moving all the time. You find this option doesn't work, you find another one. So that's why they use the term jujitsu. And so to use jujitsu, we are still not going to the negotiation table and really physically fighting, right? So what we do is we focus on merits. We focus on what you can do. We will focus on what the counterparty can do. We'll focus on that just to resolve the crisis, the issue, to come to a solution. Or we can also, we should also discuss what a third party can do. The Indus example, the arrival of the World Bank helped India and Pakistan to get a solution. It was a very serious time. So sometimes, third-party role can be very useful. They can come in any form, but that is also useful. So what if the negotiator or the other side, the counterparty, uses dirty tricks? And those dirty tricks can be in many form and shape. Even in our project negotiations, actually, I have come across, even our project negotiations, I have come across many of these, these tricks. They can resort to deliberate deception. They may create ambiguous authority. Who's deciding what? Nobody knows, right? Psychological warfare and stress can also be created. You can have personal attacks. I'm sure when we negotiate things, clients have personally attacked many times. At least they have to me. We have, and I know many colleagues who have also been personally attacked. That happens. It's their game. They sometimes play good guy, bad guy game, Oh, that part is good, we are nice ones, but those were, then the role reverses, but then you don't have a conclusion. The good guy, bad guy game, they also play that. They may do positional pressure tactics. I'm the secretary of this or minister of this. I say whatever happens, this has to be agreed. That's also a kind of tactic they may play. That happens quite a lot. In many situations, they can escalate demands. They can ask for more just to ensure that you will negotiate with a lower, figure, if that is a figure that we are. They can also do some calculated delays. Negotiations, there is always one side which is under time pressure, and you delay the thing, then the other one will be frustrated and will be under pressure and will say yes, kind of environment can be created. So if the counterparty plays dirty tricks, you still have to show, as a professional negotiator, as a principled negotiator, you should show tact and maturity. You should listen more, talk less, let them talk, explain their view, use timing to your advantage, find the right way to phrase the question or phrase the negotiation, whatever item is becoming a problem. Give something to get something. Try to do that. If you don't give anything, they won't give you anything. You have to play that game. Pursue what is meaningful, not what is expedient. It has to be, and I think that is what comes with what Somnath mentioned earlier. Which expediency is not always the case. It has to be justifiable. Think of not of matter, but of what matters. That is more important in principal negotiation. Be willing to walk away. Again, to support what Somnathji said, if you cannot, don't hesitate, you walk away. It's okay. No problem with that. Do not behave like a victim. So not behaving like a victim, what does it mean in negotiation? It means maintaining good faith and continuing to try. While trying, be aware of communication gaps. Very often negotiations become complicated because of the way people say things. Cultivate cultural sensitivity. Think long term. Yonjan talked about long term. Think of that. Maybe that is the case. You decide. Focus on win-win. Support arguments with figures and data. This is very important. When you have an issue and you can share a figure or data from a credible institution, the other side will be more amenable to accepting it. Unlike when you say, oh, this is what somebody said, or this institution said. But you bring the report which is from a credible institution and show this is the figure, then you are already creating a situation for you to win. That's principal negotiation. Support arguments with policies and precedents. Every institution, it's not only IIB which has policies, every institution has policy. Right? So bring those into play. Share the policy instruments with clients. Tell them this is why you are doing it. They will understand that you cannot change. Or precedents. If you have done similar things in some other situation, share that if that is disclosable, if there is no NDA. Okay, and again, support your arguments with examples from other borrowers. I did that a lot in the past. Whenever there was a problem on specific issue, then arguments would go on and go on. But then what you do is listen, Mr. Delegate, this is what we did in this particular thing, and that helps. Sometimes it creates a sort of pressure in terms of persuading. And supporting arguments with, examples from other negotiators. You can also share, if you are negotiating a legal documents are public documents, you could share. It's not, as I said, if it is not confidential, you share, that helps. That will bring you extra point. So then again, now, let's say, when you have this, I just said that you have to not behave like a victim and pretty much accept everything, right? But of course, that is not what I really mean. What I mean that you still should be mindful that the borrowers are all aware of our policies, and it applies to IFIs. IFIs are international institutions created by borrowers. They all were part of the drafting of those policy instruments. They know that. Even if they pretend that they don't know it, they know that. So there is no need to bluff. You just think that they know that policy and practice. You also bear in mind that your way is not always the highway, right? Or highway, your way or highway, my way or highway. That is not the situation. The counterparty may also have limitations. And also bear in mind that in most cases, and this is important, we are negotiating, particularly for international financial institutions dealing with sovereign loans, we are actually negotiating with our masters. These are the people who come from the Ministry of Finance, and they are all our represented at our board, etc., etc. They are actually, in a sense, our masters. So be careful. And think that position bargaining is not useful. Position bargaining does not help. Whatever you are, if you do that, that can be risky because you don't know what information the other side has. They may be knowing something that you don't know. So your position can be easily eliminated. So don't do that. So to master the art of negotiation, it's also important to know the steps. So the steps are basically in negotiation. You have to prepare relation. You have to develop relation. You have to information. There is information exchange. You have to persuade. You have to concede. There is concession because when you negotiate, you give and take, right? And you ultimately sign an agreement. Being aware of these steps build your strategy in a right way. And it's very difficult to say how much time it normally takes to prepare a project or relationship building. This depends. We can't prescribe it 3 weeks or 4 weeks. Some countries are super fast. They get everything to you. Some countries are super slow. They do not give anything to you. So it depends. And average, it can be a few to several months. No clear-cut answer to that. Relationship building happens normally for sovereign deals. It will happen through the ministers of finance, those who are the presumed authority to deal with finance issue, and information exchange or sharing can be done through different means. Let us not go into that. So knowing the sequence of preparation, relationship building, all this is important because it will help you persuade, give something or get something, and secure an agreement. Experienced negotiators, actually, they know all the steps. They know all the variables. They know when to be tough, when to be soft, when to be hard. They all play with that. They adapt to it to achieve what they want. Now, we do not have much time. I will just do one game. One game, because you are now told, or I have shared with you what negotiation is like. Let's play a game, guessing game. So, this statement, negotiations dealing with political issues of a country are more complex than negotiations dealing with development issues of a country. Is this statement false, or is this statement true? True? Who is saying it? How many truths, how many false? True.
It depends.
Okay, that's not an answer. It is true or false. There is no trick question. Okay, but anyway, I think majority wins here. 2 people have majority. It is actually sort of true statement. Political negotiations, they have a lot of unknowns. Development negotiations are still figures, facts, clients that you know. All the political negotiations you don't know. That's why it takes so many years for rebel groups to negotiate with establishment, or 2 rebel groups to shake hands. One more. International negotiations are not necessarily more complex than domestic negotiations. Negotiations are negotiations. True? Negotiations are negotiations. I don't know, true, whatever. What is it? Let's see. False. It is false. And by the way, these games are not I did not create these. These are all from other scholars and I have borrowed. This is not my game, it's their game. So international negotiations, why it is more complicated is because it involves many, many, many jurisdictions, many political systems, many institutions, many political ideologies. Hence, they can be more complex. Okay. I don't want to go there anymore. Now, because of time, I have to shorten my presentation. In all settings, formal negotiations happen with counterparty, and they surely trigger many surprises and unknowns. Nobody can predict that. Even in a country with which you have, or a client with which you have been negotiating for years, one fine day, they can behave differently. They can come with a different argument, different way of dealing. So what we try to do based on experience, is we share some practical do's and don'ts. And these may be useful in your negotiations one day. Because as we said in the beginning, you are all the chief negotiators of projects. So be prepared. Whenever you go for negotiations, I have seen many people who go without any preparation. In my 32 years of negotiating deals, many people go without preparation, and they try to either hide, they don't remain transparent, they don't share issues correctly. So that's not a good idea. You have to be first completely transparent, and you have to be prepared. Another problem that I have noticed is always lack of, because of deadlines, especially in IFIs this happens, Whenever you have deadlines to go to the board, go to management, this, that. So you squeeze, and what you do is you give few hours for negotiations. That's not a good approach. You have to give sufficient time for negotiation. Otherwise, you either fail to get a agreed document, or you make mistakes. Third point I have seen in AIIB as well as a World Bank context, the team leaders are arguing in front of the clients with their own team members on issues. First of all, the team leader everybody needs to know what the role of the team member is. You have safeguard guru on one side, then you listen to safeguards. If you have a finance person, then you listen to the finance person, etc. This is an example. But then I have seen people, the clients say something, then we, on our side, we are arguing in front of them. That's a wrong approach. Never do that. If really you have something, an element that really needs to be discussed separate, then take a break, go out, discuss, iron out, but bring your own institution's position. So that's why knowing the role of each in your team is very important. Look areas for agreement. We are talking about principled negotiation. Therefore, you have to find areas of agreement and keep reminding both parties of common grounds. Sometimes, discussions become lengthy, tedious because of too many details, because of technical issues involved. If that happens, you can have some technical discussions with people who are experts on that matter. Break, give them the responsibility to deal with that and come back, and a sort of plenary, you can have a nice position. Those can also help. Listen carefully. It's very important when you negotiate complicated projects. What is being said and what is really at stake may not be the same. And avoid making assumptions. You should not be making assumptions. First, there can be misunderstanding because of communication gap, but there may also be something else. I remember I was negotiating one project with a country which was, it's not mine, by the way, it's a different country, which was having, there was a civil war going on, almost going on. It had not started, but it was in the making. Project negotiation, which should have been a straightforward kind of negotiation. They came for negotiation. We did not know, but there were people from both sides. So whenever we had a small provision to discuss, we would propose, then they would start giving patriotic speeches. My republic, my leader, lots of, and very aggressive tone, like a political campaign. And both sides would do the same thing, and we were actually in the beginning lost. We did not know what had happened. And it turned out that there was civil war in the making in the country. Both sides were there for negotiations. So they were scoring point, because when they returned home, that would be useful for them. So do not assume. Sometimes so it's important to listen, but also to hear. It's very important. One last story, I know the time is off. Time is coming up. One last story is, again, another country. Sometimes choice of words can matter, you see. There was one country which had just become a member of the World Bank because it had come from a different regime. Regime had changed, and they became the member of the World Bank. And we were negotiating a straightforward, simple, first type of operation. And we have, audit people will easily know, we have a standard boilerplate provision which says the government has to submit audit report. Right, Yogesh? Yeah, there's a standard provision. And then we had that. It was, nobody discusses that point anyway. But then that point became a very serious issue for that delegation. They said, no, we cannot accept this. Well, how can we understand? So they were arguing, we don't want this clause, and we were saying, but without this clause, we cannot. And in those days, World Bank was very strict. Like Ranjini would also remember, these were tough days, right? We were very strict on the policy instruments and rules, and everything had to be written clearly. Our legal agreements were sometimes 45, 50 pages. So anyway, we did not understand what the issue was. So it went on for half an hour. Tense discussion, refusal, total refusal. And then we had to find a way. So we broke, and our chief negotiator had a meeting with that side's head of delegation and wanted to understand what it was. Tell us, what is your problem? Because this is what we want. It's an audit report, figures, how much money you have spent, how much you have used for project component, etc., etc. What is the problem? He said, in our country, this was the first project that they were negotiating with World Bank, okay? And in our country, until 6 months ago, a report, the word report meant a report about the report that are prepared by spies on political activities. Report is 100% for spies. It was, everyone everyone was reported by someone and had a report. So that term was unacceptable for them. They went, why would we? So that is the psychology they were coming. They had, so they could not accept that word report. And then we understood what the issue was. Then we said, listen, this is what we'll change the language. Naturally, inside the institution, there were some bureaucratic acrobatics. But then we found a solution. We removed the word report. They were very happy. We were also very happy because we got what we wanted. They also pretty much got whatever they want. So therefore, avoid making assumptions. Sometimes people are raising issues for a reason, and we just don't need to pontificate. We do not hold the absolute truth about ideology, system, politics, whatever. That's not our job. We are, at least here, we are international civil servants. We have a duty. We have followed rules, right? With these two stories, I will also say that, you have to be adaptable. You have to accept changes. Sometimes, if things have been prepared 1 year earlier and then things have changed, do not be too much critical about that. If changes have to happen, do it. Another point, know the role and responsibility of the delegation. I've already said the team leader needs to know the team's role and responsibility. It's also equally important to know the role and responsibility of the other side. You have to be careful about the composition, who is leading. Sometimes those people who do not speak in negotiations, they listen to, we even think that they are sleeping. Actually, they are not. They are the most powerful people. And whatever they say, that may prevail. And it happens they are not sleeping actually, they are listening. But this is their way of thinking, right? So in one country, and this story about knowing the counterparty's delegation and the role and responsibility is very important. In one country, when we were negotiating a project, I know I've shared this story with others, so those who have already heard, please bear with me, but it is an important story. We go to a negotiation. It was a straightforward electricity transmission line kind of operation, everything well done, well prepared. We go to negotiation room, and it was done in the client's office. The client had a huge, massive, almost 100 people, an office, conference room that could accommodate about 100 people. So we go there, and there were about 40, 50 people in the negotiations room, and we were three only. Lawyer, the team leader, and finance person. We were three, they were 40, minimum 40. So negotiation started. It was not like the other case of report, etc., but it was on each and every issue, everybody had to give a view. 40 people, at least 50% gave a view on 50% of the matter. So the negotiation that was supposed to be finished, completed in 1 day or 2 days, because it was a really well-prepared project, then it took 2 days and a half. We were really frustrated, but then what did we do? We are principle-based people, right? We tolerate. So we still stayed 1 day more, and then we continued to negotiate. And anyway, the third day, the negotiations were over. It was time for signing minutes of negotiation, and that's what lawyers do when they finish negotiations. Minutes of negotiation was being prepared, and we prepared our part. We were 3 people, so we put our name. And we requested the client to say, listen, we don't know who your people are, so can you please put ask someone to type the type the name of your delegation, because there are so many, right? In 10 minutes, the guy comes back with a list. There were only 6 names. Then we said, but what is this? We were discussing with 40, 45 people, but we want all the delegation, the name of all the delegates. We need it. No, but they were not delegates. They were observers. That's what we were told. Again, principle-based negotiation cannot be angry, so we smiled. But that was very, very tough. Therefore, be careful with also who the other side also. You need to know who is who. The sleeper can be the head of delegation, the most powerful person. The talker may be probably not even a delegate, right? So, and last but not least, actually 2 points. Before making any change, you also need to confirm with the head of delegation. And that is the lesson we had from this kind of negotiation where 40, 50 people are talking. And remember, negotiations can be very tense. Do not take issues personally. You represent the institution. Nothing said against you is actually said against you. It is said against the institution. So tolerate that. Always present the bank's common position. If there is any if agreement is reached, record that. If there is a problem, record that. Recording is important. And if something becomes critical, you have management. Call management. Send emails to management. Or in any case, if you are not comfortable calling the shot, you should. Management is there to help you. So do that. And always be creative and concrete and useful. Now, with this, I would like to give the floor to Vincent, who has another story to share. Vincent, the floor is yours.
All right. Thank you, Kishore. So I just... Thank you very much, Kishore. So just to conclude the session and also linking it back to, to be creative, as Kishore mentioned, just wanted to share with you a very simple story. So that's a story. You will see very soon that I have a very bad drawer. This is a camel. So this is the story of the camel and the wise man. So this is the man. Let's move to Kashgar, the western part of China. And this old man has 17 camels. And then he has also 3 sons. He has the elder son. I will make it very long. Let's say. Then you have a middle son. A little shorter. It's a very mature. There is no daughter, you can realize, it's just a man. So, and this man has a will. And he said in his will that when I will pass away, my eldest son should get half of my camels. Pretty fair. Then he said in his will, my middle son should have 1/3 of my camel. And then he said my youngest son should have 1/9 of my camel. So when this poor man decided that I passed away, the eldest son opened the will. He opened the will, and he realized that, we have 17 camels in the family. Half will come to me, 1/3 to my younger brother, and 1/9 to my the youngest son that we have, the younger brother. So then they started to quarrel. So they say, what will be the solution for us? And of course, they will not want to cut one leg of the camel. So what would they do? Can you see that? Yeah? So what happened is that the eldest son, they started to discuss and so couldn't find any solutions together. So the eldest son went to the wise man of the village. And the wise man of the village looked at the situation. He said, 17 camels, 3 sons. This is the repartition. This is very difficult. So he went back, started to think about it. And then the wise man in Kashgar also had camels. So he said, let me bring one of my camels. So instead of having 17 camels, they had 18 camels to distribute. So they say, okay, let's distribute 18 camels. So half of my 18 camels, 9, here 6, and here would be 3. So after that they sum up,
2.
and 2. Oh, sorry, 2. Then they sum up, and they had 17 camels. They found a solution, and then the wise man took his own camel and went back home. So this is just to exemplify. So when we are facing a negotiation that doesn't look very, that doesn't have any solutions, you need, as Kishore mentioned, to really think very creatively. But on top of that, first you have to think that there is a solution that could be found. Because if you say there is no solution and you don't think, let's say, out of the box, or you don't creative you don't bring creative solutions, maybe you may be stuck very quickly in the discussion and in your negotiation. So this is really...
So you see, being creative, the institution did not lose any, the wise man did not lose anything, but he helped a very complicated situation to be resolved. So last thing, being an effective negotiator does not require much. You just have to remember 3 points. Preparation, plan of action, patience, enormous amount of patience, policy and technical awareness are critical. Thinking and consulting before responding, extremely important. And I think these are all things that came in my presentation earlier. And creativity and flexibility can be very helpful. That is how you can do an efficient negotiation with optimal results. I think we will stop here. We would like to thank you. Anyway, last point is you are the negotiator. Good luck, celebrate. AIB is behind you, right? But what we would like to do is to really sincerely thank you. Despite your multiple choices, you came here. And we hope it was useful. Thank you so much.